Hi there and welcome to The History Teacher. This revision video covers early Elizabethan England 1558 to 1588 of the GCSE Edexcel History 9-1 course. Hopefully you'll also find it useful though, even if you're studying any of the other exam boards or even if, like me, you just love history. Hi there guys, we're going to be looking at the reasons for the English victory over the Spanish Armada in 1588 today. But first, let's just remind ourselves of the events of the invasion itself. On the 29th of July 1588, the Armada was first spotted travelling in its protective crescent formation in the English Channel. Remember, the Spanish had over 130 ships, so the sight of all those invaders must have been pretty terrifying. 3 days later, the Battle of Plymouth took place. This is a bit of a non-event because Drake and Howard kept their distance and they fired at the Armada with heavy cannon. They did succeed in capturing 2 Spanish vessels, but the Armada continued largely unaffected. The Armada continued east and arrived at the Isle of Wight on the 3rd of August. This was a much more important encounter. The Spanish found themselves seriously outgunned by the English and wasted most of their ammunition in countering the attack. This delayed the Armada and they were forced to drop anchor off the coast of the Netherlands in a place called Gravelines to wait for the Duke of Parma with reinforcements at Calais. On the 8th of August, the English attacked the now stationary Armada with fireships. This led to panic among the Spanish and the close formation that they had relied on broke up. The Spanish were never able to rendezvous with the Duke of Parma and they scattered. So, why are the English fleet, led by Howard and Drake, able to defeat the Spanish Armada? There are several reasons for this, and you will need to know at least 3 in detail. The main reasons can be divided into 3 categories. The actions of the Spanish, including poor communication, a lack of supplies, and the panic caused by the fireships. The actions of the English, including English tactics and better equipped armed ships. And finally, the weather. There was no communication at all between the admiral of the Spanish fleet, the Duke of Medina Sidonia, and the commander of the land army, the Duke of Parma. This meant that neither had any idea where the other one was, and if either was facing difficulties. So, when the Armada was forced to drop anchor, the Duke of Parma was unaware that this had happened. Even worse, because there were no deep water ports, as the Dutch rebels still possessed Ostend, Medina Sidonia was forced to meet the army at sea, planning to ferry them in small boats, and this made communication almost impossible. The Spanish ships were at sea for over 10 weeks and were poorly supplied. By August, all the food they had bought had rotted in the barrels, and the Spanish were understandably disheartened by this, and this affected morale. The final mistake the Spanish made was to panic at the Battle of Gravelines. At the approach of the English fireships, many of the Spanish captains cut their anchors and drifted into the North Sea, thus losing the protection of the formation and seriously depleting the Spanish force. This was the end for the Spanish Armada, and the whole fleet was forced to flee. However, we can't lay all of the responsibility at the feet of the Spanish commanders. The English were clever and prepared. English ships were better armed and equipped and had the benefit of being close to their own docks. Cannons were mounted on smaller gun carriages, meaning they could be reloaded more quickly, bombarding the Spanish fleet throughout. Many Spanish ships were damaged and were unable to rejoin the Armada. The tactics of Howard and Drake should also not be underestimated. They used the home advantage and harried the Armada in the English Channel. English losses were minimal as the English ships never got close enough to be boarded by the Spanish, while remaining close enough to continue firing on the Armada, causing that damage to the Spanish ships. Drake's plan to use fireships was also important because that was the cause of the breakup of the fleet and ultimately the English victory. Finally, the weather did play an important part in the English victory. After the Battle of Gravelines, the Spanish were forced to flee into the North Sea and to make their way round Scotland and back to Spain. Gale force winds battered the Armada as it went, causing huge destruction to the Spanish ships. Only half the original Armada returned to Spain, missing over 3/4 of its men, many of whom had drowned in the Irish Sea. So remember that you need to know 3 key reasons for that defeat and be able to make a judgment as to what were the most important factors. Okay, that's everything for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave me a comment. I always reply as quickly as I can. Don't forget, if you like my content, I'd really appreciate it if you buy me a coffee to keep me going. And that's everything for today, and I will see you next time.